I am Pranjal Bathia, working as principal architect for Red Hat. I started my journey as software developer right after my college graduation. Worked for Oracle for a few years and then joined Red Hat. At Red Hat, I had opportunity to work on many different initiatives, which helped me to grow as an architect. Now, in recent past, I had chance to work with or develop master data management solution for Red Hat. Before that, I even built a middleware solution at Red Hat, which handles millions of events per day. Today, with all of you, I'm going to talk about metamorphosis of developer into an architect, what that journey looks like, and how I really turned into an architect. Before getting started, I would like to know any favorite tools or sites which work at massive scale from audience. Any examples?
Amazon.
Okay, nice.
Google.
Okay, awesome.
Stack Overflow.
Okay, okay, all right. So all those applications, like for example, Google, Amazon AWS, or Netflix, Stack Overflow, all those are really the complex system because they possess either of these characteristics. It could be one or more. Let's take example of Google. Google is a search engine. It's highly robust system. The speed is amazing because it possesses either of these characteristics. Same for Amazon AWS. It's highly adaptable. You can plug your VM anywhere and just go with it. Now, many of us really have a dream of how I can be one who build those applications. How I can be one who can build those complex systems which will have huge impact on the society and community. There are many examples available in the industry who started their career as developer and grown into their career and had a huge impact on the society. Let's take a couple of examples who started their journey and became either architect or CTOs or directors and so on. Right? First example is Werner Vogels. Werner Vogels is currently CTO at Amazon, and he's also known as Godfather of Cloud. His leadership really helped Amazon to create one of its important and popular offering, AWS. He's known as expert in building ultra-scalable systems. Next example, Dynamash. She is the director at Netflix, and under her leadership, Netflix really turned from DVD business to microservices business, and that helped Netflix to grow very at rapid scale. Another example, Jeff Dean. Jeff Dean is currently serving as SVP at Google Research and AI. He is co-designer and co-implementer for many of the algorithms which are being used as a backbone for many of the Google's popular applications like advertising system, crawling index, and whatnot. Another example, Martin Fowler. He is currently working as chief scientist at ThoughtWorks, and we all know he is pioneer for agile development practices. His research and his work has been instrumental in defining the software development processes in many areas like design patterns, refactoring, enterprise application architecture, and so on. Another example, Leslie Lamport. He was the initial developer for documentation system called LaTeX. LaTeX is popularly used in designing the technical documentations. And his work in the distributed computing has huge impact worldwide. Another example, latest example, Alec Radford. He is a co-founding member for OpenAI. He was the one who built ChatGPT or GPT algorithms with Ilya. And now we all know what ChatGPT is doing magic in our lives. Last but not least, our own Chris Wright. He is serving as a CTO at Red Hat right now. And he was initial developer into Linux kernel. And his impact or his decisions on NFV adoption to telecommunication has huge impact in overall telco industry. He was even lead developer for OpenStack, which is popularly used in building and managing the public and private clouds for many different customers. Now, all those examples show us you can start your journey as developer and be the one who can have a huge impact across society and be a role model for many of the developers. Now, why metamorphosis? Metamorphosis is a change of form, structure, or substance. It's a process by which young form can get converted into an adult form. Now, why metamorphosis? I'm analogizing to the architect journey. One fine day, my daughter, again same one for whom I took the selfie with all of you. So one fine day, she came to me with her social studies book in her hand and started explaining, Mama, today I got to learn about how butterflies are born. And she showed me this diagram from her book. And she was explaining me like how egg gets converted into caterpillar and then chrysalis and how butterflies are born. She was super excited. And in my mind, I was relating this analogy, how architect within me is born. Now, the way I was thinking is like, egg I was relating to when I started my career as software engineer. You could relate caterpillar as I started growing into senior role for software engineer or developer. And then chrysalis is like you are transitioning into architect, and butterfly is like where you are really born as architect. And as you become architect, you really design the system which you hand over to implementation team and more eggs are born and so on. Now, just to get a glimpse of what audience mix we have, how many of you are software engineers started their careers? Any senior software engineers? Any principal software engineers? Nice. Any architects here? Okay. Now, I would like to relate to the growth stages, how you become software engineer to an architect. When you start your career as a software developer, you are mostly focused on execution. You get a task, you try to implement it, you try to fix the bugs, or you try to develop a feature, and you are trying to become mastering of that particular language. And that is where you are really into execution stage. As you grow in your career, you start thinking in the tactical stage, where you start focusing on, you can design components, you can make smaller architectural decisions, and you even start mentoring some of the junior associates. Then you grow into strategic area, where you start taking more technology stack related decisions. You start thinking about what should the development process should look like. You start engaging with more and more stakeholders in order to get the requirements and so on. And then you grow into business. So when you grow into business side, you start understanding organization needs. What exactly organization needs. And then you start translating them into technical terms in a way that it impacts your business. And then you analyze your market conditions, and then based on financial condition and market conditions, you try to create the prioritization roadmap, and then you have like more execution teams getting implemented and so on. Now, each of those growth stages need different skill sets. When you are into execution state, when you are really starting with your career, you're mostly focused on programming languages, data structures, and algorithms. You try to debug the code, you try to optimize your code, you probably want to know how do I test my code, whatever I have written, and you want to push it to some repository, so you would need to have the version control knowledge and so on. As you grow into next stage of tactical, you start thinking on the design pattern. Okay, what design pattern I need to use while building this component, while building this service. You start thinking on how do I refactor my code so that I can reuse it. And then you start applying some of the system architectural decisions, and you even start mentoring your junior associates, and over the time you even start creating product management skill set. Now, as you grow into further stage or progress your career, you start thinking a little broadly. You start thinking, okay, this technology selection is probably apt for my needs, or this style of architecture is apt for my needs. And even you start thinking in the architectural quality attributes, like what the performance should look like. How do I scale my applications quickly? How do I ensure that my software is pretty secure, whatever I'm building, and so on. And in the business stage, you start thinking based on financial acumen. You start analyzing your business, you start analyzing market conditions, and then whatever financial resources you have in hand. Accordingly, you start building certain soft skills like negotiation, stakeholder management, and so on. So at each stage, you need different skill set. Now, this is another depiction of the stages. Here I tried to divide each of those growth stage into two different levels. And this is all indicative. These are not rigid. Or don't blame me for like, okay, I need to step in this way. It's not needed. It's up to your choice. It's up to organization needs. It's up to what project you are really working on. But this is based on what I had seen in my past career. You start your career as software developer, and as you grow higher and higher. And it's not really needed that, let's see, if you reach to an architect level, and sometimes many of the architects feel like, this is not my cup of tea, and hence, again, they want to come back to like normal principal, and they want to be a principal software engineer who is really focused on building the code. That's fine. That's individual career aspirations, and that's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong or right in that. But this is the stack generally I had seen. And here in this first stage, where we are focused on execution, most of our time goes into learning, applying, and then solving a particular problem. As you grow into this tactical stage, you start solving multiple problems. And as you grow further, you start thinking on different various problems plus various domains. Now, when you start your career as software engineer, you continue to grow in that particular domain. So if you started your career as Java developer, you try to go deeper and deeper into it. But as you really grow, you start thinking on broader set of knowledge. And this is really where you become to have T-shaped skill set. And I will try to explain that little more with this diagram. Now, here in this, you could start your career anywhere. You can start your career as a front-end or back-end developer. You could start your career as quality engineer, or you could start your career as DevOps. So you could go deeper into any of this area, but while you are going in deeper of this area, you start interacting with different teams. Let's take example, where let's see if you are building a backend API. If you are building backend API, you start interacting with UI team in order to know how my developed API is going to be consumed by UI team. At the same time, you may have interaction with DevOps team, how your code is going to get deployed in different environments. Or maybe you have some interactions with security team to ensure that whatever code base you have built is secure enough, and so on. And you can, as you are going into deeper, you start getting breadth of knowledge of different disciplines. I'm just calling these all as a discipline. Now, as you grow to this level, you start interacting more and more with non-technical folks. And this is where your soft skill really becomes crucial. You start interacting with executives to know business vision and how you can translate it into technical. You start interacting with product teams to know the product roadmaps and so on. You start talking to sales and marketing folks to ensure that the architecture you are building is based on their perspective as well. And you sometimes even have interactions with consumer to get their feedbacks and ensure your architecture is supporting their feedbacks and so on. Now, the reason I'm calling it as spectrum is the way when the light passes through glass prism or water droplet, The range of colors are produced in the same fashion. When all those requirements are passed from business architect or enterprise architect, different blueprints are produced for different disciplines. And that's the reason I'm calling it as spectrum. Now, here one thing I want to highlight is like, as you grow or as you progress in your career, soft skills and communication become more and more crucial because being in the same being in the same place, you would need to communicate with a non-technical community plus technical community for the same problem. And that is where communication plays important role, and you really grow into leadership roles. Now there are, and whole this model is really the T-shaped. So here, like you are having depth of knowledge and breadth of many other disciplines. Now in the industry, there are more such models being used, like I-shaped model. I-shaped model is you are specialized into certain things. And this specialized is like where you spend your most of time into certain technology or certain tool set and so on. This T-shape is where you are having specialization into one thing, but you have broader knowledge of many other disciplines. And then there is pie-shaped or comb-shaped, where you possess like specialization into multiple things, and at the same time you have broader knowledge of many other disciplines. I really focus on this T-shaped approach. It's not like you jack of all, but at least master of one, and that really plays important role. Now, how do I get there? Okay, I understood what I need to know to become an architect, but how do I get there? In my thought process as an architect, in your overall career, even if you start early, you get a chance to build only 10 to 15 architectures from scratch because we have limited time. So how do we learn? In that case, learning from masters plays crucial role. There are many examples available where architectural decisions to many organizations has huge impact and they transform their business. They transform their business by innovating, by scaling, by adapting to the rapid market conditions because they had right architecture in place. And that really helped them to lay the foundation for their huge success. Now, again, another popular example of Netflix. Netflix was earlier into DVD business. They were renting the DVDs. When they chosen to adopt the microservice-based approach, they were really able to transform their business rapidly and at the same time ensuring they're handling millions of concurrent users. They converted their monolithic application into microservices-based architecture, which helped them to release quickly, release rapidly. They were able to get their features quickly, and at the same time, they were able to scale individual microservices without affecting others. And this architecture is publicly available even on their web forms. I had given link because I felt this particular Nidhi, my friend, is really explaining it very nicely. So here you could see when you watch something on the Netflix, you are probably here, but in the back end, they have multiple services, and this is simplest form. They have very complex architecture, but to get started, you can really learn what different architecture styles they have used, what are the different services they created, how those services are interacting with each other, and so on. Here is another example I built for one of the e-commerce platform. Now, many of us do the online shopping. When we do online shopping, what probably we are doing is, okay, browsing through the product, adding to our cart, proceed to the checkout, do the billing, make the payment, place the order, and then we get the delivery at our house. So from our side, it's very simple. That process looks very simple. But on the back end side, if you see, it could involve a hell lot of systems to do particular jobs. When you are listing down the products, Those are probably coming from the product catalog. Now, again, based on the number of products you could have for your business varies, and then that's where you could have your own individual product management or payment place, and then you could have pricing master and so on. When you are doing or when you are placing order, you could have order management system, then you could have billing system, invoicing system, you could have different payment gateways. And then once the order is placed, that would need to get notified to the warehouse team so that shipment is tracked. And then at the same time, you continuously keep on getting the notification where exactly your order is and so on. So there are many such examples available online. I would recommend you to learn from their styles, and that helps you to grow from their experiences, success, failures, and whatnot. Now, how do you prepare your adventure journey? How do you map your path to success? To become a successful architect, you would really need consistent efforts. Consistent effort to learn more, to gain knowledge from others, and then keep on practicing it. So, in my journey, I learned some tips and techniques which I would like to share here. First and foremost is master the fundamentals. When you start your career, you are thinking on programming language, data structure, or algorithms. Focus on getting masters to those fundamentals, because that will help you in the long run. So start practicing best practices and try to write maintainable code, clean code, and so on. Acquire domain knowledge. This is pretty important. When you are early into stages, you generally get certain tasks to be delivered or executed, and you focus on that task. You do an awesome job in getting it executed. But what I would recommend is start asking those W questions. Why I'm doing it, for whom I'm doing it, what exactly I need to have, and then how I'm going to do it. I think these W questions will really help you to acquire domain knowledge. And acquiring domain knowledge really helps to build better solutions and better solutions for the needs. So start asking those questions. Let's see, if I make change over here, how and where it will have impact. And if it is having impact, what that impact will look like, and so on. Learn about software design and architecture. Start learning those from early stages. Start thinking on, okay, what are the best practices I could use for writing this type of code? Let's see, if you are building components, start thinking in what are the possible options available to build these kind of components. Then you can try to do the pros and cons analysis of each of those, and even try to apply architectural quality attributes right from start. Like, for example, whatever code you are writing, will it work for, let's see, if you are building code for 100 users, think in a way that will it work for 1,000 users? Or when you are doing certain payment related or any P2 information related activity, start thinking of like, is there any way where my data will get accessible to the hackers or something like that. Start thinking in a way how you can make your products more secure and secure. Start thinking in those architectural attributes. And there are many: robust, availability, scalability, performance, it should be secure, and so on. Gain experience with various technologies and tools. And I would emphasize again, like, start using different tools and technologies. It should not be the case like, okay, I'm very comfortable in IntelliJ, I will continue to use that. It should not be the case. If there are multiple other options getting available, start using those. Not just IDE, but any tools. It could be for testing, it could be for developing your code, or it could be for creating smaller diagrams, or it could be anything. Start getting experience with multiple tools. Be ready to use different tools, and that will help you to increase your horizon as you grow into your career. Because when you are mentoring your junior associates, you will have that thought process in handy, why I'm choosing this particular technology, why I'm choosing this particular tool, why I have not chosen this, why I'm using this, and so on. Develop soft skills. This is pretty important. Believe me, when I started my career, I never used to think soft skills are pretty important because I used to say, like, my code should work. It should not be me. But frankly, believe me, guys, this is not the case. As you grow into your career, you start talking more and more with different folks, and soft skill and communication skills play a crucial role to become a leader in your organization. So cultivate those communication, collaboration, leadership skills right from start, and give some emphasis on that as well, not just the technical skills. Seek mentorship and guidance. This is pretty important. This personally helped me a lot. I used to connect to mentors who are into the same domain, no matter whether those are from same organization, same department, same geography, no matter. I used to connect them. If I find there are certain blogs, find a ways to get them connected. People are very helpful. People are very genuine. And if the hesitation is generally on our side, but if you reach out to those folks, these folks are pretty open to help you. So seek for guidance and mentorship wherever you can. Take on more responsibilities. I know most of you may not like it, but believe me, in early stages, you can spend little more time to learn more. As your family grows, you find short of time to learn more things because you get other responsibilities and roles in your personal life. So in early stages, if you have chance, if you have bandwidth, I would recommend you to take on more responsibility. What do I mean by take on more responsibility? Let's say you are developing a code and your team doesn't have who could do the DevOps job. Volunteer for that. Ask for that. Can I do that? For whoever tech lead is, whoever manager is, whatever, like whatever process you have in your organization, ask for more responsibility if you have that opportunity, and this will help you to grow in long run because you will already be doing that, or you have already done that somewhere, so you can apply that knowledge in the later stages. Share knowledge and contribute to the community. Only way to get expert is sharing. So start sharing from early stages. Let's see, I learned this today. Start sharing with your colleagues, peers, or junior associates. Or if you're not comfortable directly sharing, start writing those blogs. If you're not comfortable directly publishing it, it's okay. First, you can just write it, have it unpublished, and then whenever you are feeling comfortable, you start publishing those. Sharing really helps you to get expert into those. Be adaptable and open to change. I think the only constant thing in software industry is change, and I think everybody is aware of that. So be adaptive and open for change, and be ready for any change for the technology or tools or skills. Just be ready for that. Now, I mentioned change is the only constant thing in software industry. Now, many of you might have question, how do I keep up to date for myself? Because I have day-to-day job to do. I have to continue to fix my bugs, or I need to complete that feature. I need to get my work done, and so on. How do I keep up to date with myself? Here I would like to share a few claims what I try to use in my personal life. Follow certain tech news websites and blog. You can choose it wisely based on your interest. Like, for example, for security, you will have different tech news channels or blogs. For coding, if you are very into middleware stuff, you will have different tech sites. If you are into DevOps, you will have different websites. So based on that, based on your interest, I would recommend you to follow those tech news channels or blogs. Join online communities and forums. Many people are active on online communities, and people are very responsive to answer your questions. And I feel that is where you learn to know more styles, because in your organization, probably you are working in a small group of people. But if you think of online communities or forum, you will see people across the world. So you will get to know different styles in your early stages. Subscribe to newsletters and podcasts. Sometimes we forget to go to that website and see what's happening. So in that case, subscribing to certain newsletter, not all, because it will fill up your inbox. I don't want you to do that. But subscribe to the wise one and where you really don't want to mess it. Follow expert and thought leaders on social media. This is my favorite. Anyway, we spend a lot of time on social media. So why not to follow the expert and thought leaders on that? That will at least help you to get the right feed, which will be productive for your career. So you can follow the thought leaders on LinkedIn, Twitter, whichever social platform they generally share their insights, experience, and updates on the latest trends on those social medias. Attend conference. I think many of you are already doing it, but I try to attend even local meetups. With local meetups also, sometimes we get more confidence, and workshops as well sometimes, because that will help you to get actual coding experience, which we really need in our future. Take online courses and attend webinars. I think this is well known because there are many online courses available on LinkedIn, Coursera, Udacity, Pluralsight, and so many. And you can take just not technical. What I really want to recommend over here is not just technical courses, but try to even put certain emphasis on the non-technical courses, which will help you to grow. Read research paper and publication. I know this is boring, but believe me, if you want to go deeper into certain things, follow certain research papers, because on blogs you may not get those deeper understanding of certain subject areas. And that is where I would recommend you to read certain ACM, IEEE research papers and publications, because research and scientists really do years of effort on getting that paper published. And that has worth in that. It's not just the blog which is written in a few minutes. Contribute to open source project. As a Red Hatter, I will definitely recommend all of you to contribute to open source, because you would get a chance to learn on different practices from different people across the world. Set aside dedicated time for learning. I know many of our mentors keep on telling us, set aside some learning time, but sometimes we get so lazy or something like that. But I would really recommend you to find out a schedule which will really work for you for next 5 years. It could be 5 minutes, 15 minutes a day, or it could be 2 hours a week. It could be 1 full day in a month. That's okay. But choose that schedule wisely and ensure that with that schedule you can really run for 5 years. Otherwise, you will start for probably 1 or 2 months and you will end up doing nothing. Better you choose or you adapt certain things in your schedule which you can really run it for long run. And that makes a difference, because consistency and discipline is pretty important when we are thinking or focusing on learning. Engage in peer learning and discussions. This is my favorite. Before COVID, we used to go to office. We used to have those discussions over coffee tables. But nowadays, in remote world, not necessarily we have those discussions with our colleagues. And that's really something I really miss it. So what I generally try to do is, I'm still remote, but many of you might be going to office. But in remote world, what I try to do is, I know my fellow colleagues with whom I want to interact and discuss on things I'm working on, things I'm learning on. So I keep textings with them. So textings are like once a month, or probably once a 2 month, or once a quarter, depending on the availability of that person and my availability. So have those things dedicated for technical discussions, where you will discuss, okay, in last 2 months I learned this new. That fellow associate will tell me, okay, in last 2 months I learned this. And we are just chit-chatting on whatever learnings we had in the past, like for 2 years. And that way we are still engaged with each other. And it will really help you to deepen the understanding, because you both are from the same domain and same technology and same probably company. Now, in the conclusion, I know it's hard. It's not that easy to grow from developer to architect. But it involves continuous learning, practice, and growth. If you follow the persistent and consistent approach, you can achieve your goals, and which can have significant impact on whole software industry. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Otherwise, I ask.
Oh.
What's the difference between a senior software developer or principal software developer and architect?
Senior software developer and?
And architect. So what's the difference between the developer who is like really good and architect who is like really good?
Okay. So in the architect, we could really have different architects, like you are solution architect or technical architect or security architect or enterprise architect. I would say senior software engineer could probably get equivalent to technical architect who is solving certain technical problems, because you are focused on building that particular component. At the same time, you are mentoring your junior associates, you are developing certain services, and you are focused on getting those things done. Whereas what I emphasized on business architect or enterprise architect is where exposure architect gets is little wider, because you start knowing little more domains, you start knowing business problems, you start applying security principles. And not necessarily software engineer won't apply that, but software engineer at that stage may not have exposure to all the aspects which architect might think of.
More questions or I ask? There was a question.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for this talk. Really, really interesting. What I wanted to ask you about is, in your personal opinion, how much of a difference does it make for an architect whether they do hands-on coding or whether they completely detach themselves from these low-level details and they're just the person that draws the diagrams and makes everybody else follow what they
It's a very good question. And I keep on asking that to myself as well, how much coding I should do being an architect. So in my opinion, it really varies at which role you are into your organization. So for example, where currently I'm located in my organization is I hardly do coding. But because my day-to-day responsibilities are too packed with talking to stakeholders, understanding the current state, building the roadmap for target states, and getting it engaged with technical teams, frankly speaking. And whenever I felt like, okay, this POC probably I can do it on my own. But short of time doesn't allow me to that, and that's where I get technical leads assigned to my team, and we get those POCs done by those technical teams. But frankly speaking, there is no hard and fast rule whether architect should be hands-on coding or not. It really depends. And you will hear that it depends answer to many of the questions in architectural journey, but that's really true. It really varies situation wise, organization need wise, and then your own career aspiration as well.
Thanks. I think you've probably given a lot of people here a lot of things to think about, because there are an awful lot of steps to growth. Personally, I'm an architect most of the time, a hands-off architect as it happens. But I guess, what advice would you give to people for like finding out whether or not they want to be an architect or not? Because I also have peers who had stepped into those shoes and know that it's not the right thing for them without going too far down the wrong path.
Yeah. So I think at certain stages, let me come back to this diagram. I think what I had seen while talking to multiple people is like many times when you are in this tactical stage, you have that dilemma where exactly you would need to go. And you have different paths open for you. You could go either in architect role, or you could continue to be in the principal software engineer and still be a hands-on coder, or you could really move into management roles, and that's very tempting as well. You could grow into project management role where you can become a product owner, because I believe at this stage you really have those paths open, and that's where it could take a little longer time, which path I really need to go for. It could be architect where you would have less hands-on experience. If you want to be into principal software engineer, that's okay. And that's what I said. There is nothing right or wrong. It's based on individual passion, individual career aspirations, and at the same time, your organization needs as well as even department needs. And this is just indicative. The title really varies. It's based on like, I believe it really, what work you are doing, is it making you happy? This title, in my thought process, it really doesn't matter. As far as the work you are doing is making you happy and you should feel like, okay, tomorrow I want to, what exactly I'm gonna learn about. I know it looks little fancy, but believe me, that's what really motivates you to grow. I'm not sure whether I answered your question, but
Yeah, no, I think so. It just get the experience, the relevant skills.
yeah.
That's okay. It's answered. Oh. Yeah, I just said, yeah, no, it does answer the question, I think. It's just about getting and testing the water with the relevant skills,
Yeah.
finding out, making the decisions for yourself as well.
Yeah, and there are certain websites like architecture katas or something if you really want to grow and experience, okay, whether you are apt for that. There are problem sets given on that architecture katas where you can just go and pick any of those problems, try to build your architecture and see if that is working, and then you can discuss with fellow associates. Because in real life, you may not get those chances on like a daily basis. So let's see, if you want to experience that, there are websites if you just get me connected, I can share you those websites where you can practice your architectural skills.
Questions? Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
Okay.
There was a diagram about the different shapes, like I shape, T shape, and
Okay,
so
sure,
on.
sure. Yeah.
And if you look at the other diagram that you shared earlier,
Okay, this spectrum.
so
Right?
like if you the one before with this, yes.
Yeah, sure.
So as you go up, like, does that mean that those shapes become less applicable because you are growing more in breadth
No,
and then?
this whole diagram is really for T-shaped because you are going deeper into this, and then at the same time you are really trying to breadth of knowledge. So this is more or less T-shaped approach, and my whole presentation mostly was on T-shaped because this is again inverted T, so T-shaped. But because many times I get a question, what is I-shaped, what is pi-shaped, and I felt like this diagram really does that justice without explaining too much, where you can easily understand, okay, this is like specialization in particular thing, and you not necessarily have the breadth of knowledge of other disciplines, and that's okay. You can still be expert into that and do your perfect job, that's okay. But if you want to grow into architect role, I believe you would need to possess either of this, because just having specialization in one stream may not help you to grow quickly. And that is where breadth of knowledge really helps. And you can have your own choices. Like if you are expert into Spring Boot, okay, you are even expert in AI, ML, that's okay. But at the same time, if you have enough knowledge of other disciplines, you can still grow into that area.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you very much.
thank you.
next question. Okay, I'll ask one.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned that open source is a great idea to get some experience,
Yeah.
but how can architect do that? Because technical writer can go and fix documentation or create new one, translate to Hindi, translate to Ukrainian, other languages. Test engineers and developers, we can go for tickets. So an architect comes to Quarkus project or Apache Spark and does what?
Okay. So the way I mentioned is like you can start contributing to open source in your early stages. Not necessarily when you are at the architect, you would need to start that. You could be at any stage, right? And that's where I asked, like how many of you are software engineers and so on. And these tips are for everyone. When you start your career, I would recommend you to start contributing to open source. And it doesn't really true architect don't need to contribute to open source, because if you are a hands-on architect, you can still contribute to open source. And I believe many times in my day-to-day job, I don't really need to code. And that is where if I contribute to open source, it becomes a win-win for me, because I stay up to date with current trends happening in technology. And at the same time, I'm fulfilling my day-to-day duties at office. So open source is a great way to keep engaged for ourselves with the latest trend.
Do you think architects can create a task? I mean, the issue doesn't have to be there in documentation, but you can come to, let's say, Apache Spark and understand how it actually works, and then you can go and create content about it. And maybe you can even find architects of Apache Spark and interview them.
It's okay,
They
right?
don't get interviewed often.
So it's okay. Like it's really based on. I believe that that's true. Architects may not have that time to do that. That's okay, but it doesn't mean that they're not using it. Let's see. When I'm enterprise architect, I had to go with lot of documentation, because I need to, when I'm doing that technology choices, sometimes I need to know, okay, these are the pros, these are the cons, and sometimes I need to go deeper into those documentation. While going through those documentation, if I find certain things can be improved, obviously I can go and participate that or try to improve that. So I believe architects are still very much engaged with execution team, because the key, and frankly speaking, in my today's role, I spend nearly 60% time with execution team to ensure that they're making those architectural choices what I had decided for the business.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, thanks, Pranjal, for the nice talk. It was very informative. So I have one question, like you suggested to go through various blogs, podcasts, video tutorial, whatnot, sometimes you can get lost. So do you have
Yes.
any book which is more formalized way to become principal architect, not just the technical aspect of it, but also the soft or the soft skill of it? Or you are aware of?
No. In early stages, I used to read a lot of books, frankly speaking. I used to get the hard copies because I was not finding it, like I will complete those books over online. So I had those Scala books, Java books. My book, one of my favorite book is Team Topologies, frankly speaking. I think that really tells you what type of team structure you would need to have to build successful business. And that's more apt at this point, at this stage for me. Probably it may not be for you. But recommendation-wise, I get lost in books as well. So I prefer, and when I mention those, like subscribe to those podcasts or newsletter, you don't necessarily need to spend hell lot of time on understanding that, but you would need to be up to date with those. Otherwise, being an architect, what happens is like sometimes people will come with those technology jargons and you feel lost because you have not even heard of those. And that's where at least keeping up to date with those trends is pretty important. And if your fundamentals are clear, I think even if those hundreds of jargons are coming to you, it doesn't really bother you. For example, AI/ML. If I know what basic principles it's using internally, I don't need to know what exactly algorithm they are using in building the GPT. That's okay. And same thing for any tools and choices. We don't really need to go too much deeper into it if our principles are clear, what the basic principles we use for building the softwares. It's okay. But unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you. But you may want to read the team topologies. It's a very good book.
Sure, I'll go.
You can
Thank
have a hard copy of that as well.
Thank you.
Questions? Oh, time.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
an
you.
amazing talk.
Thank you.